through our series in the book of Ephesians. Keep Growing, Keep Going is the name of our series, and today we want to discuss the topic of walking worthy of our calling. We're going to jump right into it. There's a lot of context to the book of Ephesians we've covered over the last 3 weeks. If you've missed them, I'd encourage you to go back. A lot of truth that is very practically applied to our everyday lives and our walk with the Lord and our faith. So I'd encourage you to go back on the app or the website and listen. But let's jump right in. We're in chapter 4 of the book of Ephesians. We'll start in verse 1 and read through verse 7. And our first point here, if you're following the notes that were in the bulletin, is stick together. Let's read verses 1 through 7. As a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body, one spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. But to each one of us, grace has been given as Christ has apportioned it. There's some character qualities. He talks about stick together. Make every effort to keep the unity, he said in verse 3. And there are some character qualities that I saw in this text that help us maintain unity. And we want to apply these here in our church, but I also want you to think about applying them in your marriage, in your family relationships, in your friendships, even in your professional relationships. These character qualities will help you stick together to the people you want to stick together with. Because we all know it's not easy, right? Life can be very difficult. There can be lots of challenges, especially in our most important relationships. Did you catch those character qualities? Number 1, humility, lowliness of mind, not thinking yourself better than someone or more valuable than someone. And humility comes from, at least for us as believers in Jesus, comparing ourselves to Jesus rather than comparing ourselves to one another. I need to not see myself as better or more righteous, but as one who has been rescued by the grace of God, and now I want to be a part of helping other people. That humility, that lowliness of mind, approaching it as I look at Christ and not comparing myself to others. That second character quality that's going to help us stick together as a church and in our families is gentleness. And I'm looking at the Greek definitions here as it was written in Greek, but gentleness means gentle strength or power under control. I am strong, but I keep that strength under control. You know, I grew up wrestling with my father all the time as a little guy. And how many of you have had kids and you wrestle with your kids? You toss them around, pillow fights and wrestling. And grown men, we need to be gentle when we're wrestling with our little kids, right? And I remember as a little tyke, coming up to my dad, and I'm punching him, and I'm kicking him, and I'm jumping on his back, and trying to put him in a headlock, and I can't even get my arm all the way around his neck, it's so thick, and I'm saying, Dad, I could beat you, and I beat him, and he'd let me win, and he'd lay there, and I'm the champion, and I remember getting pretty arrogant, thinking, I can even beat my dad. And I'm saying, Dad, you're so weak, I can beat you. And then one day, for one moment, he showed me one flash of his strength, as I ran to do a jump kick, and I'm flying through the air, and he just catches me by the hips, and kind of swings around and tosses me, and as I'm flying through the air towards the bed, I'm thinking, wow, I think he's been holding back a little bit all of these years. And landing on the bed, I was perfectly fine, but for that moment I realized this guy has incredible strength, yet every time we fight, no matter how many times I poke him in the eye, or kick him in the ribs, or taunt him and say how I'm better than him, he would hold back. Gentleness. Patience is that third character quality. That patience is that long sense of anger and passion, waiting a significant or sufficient amount of time before expressing anger. It's really well said in this way, long-tempered as opposed to short-tempered. Right? We've all heard of, he's short-tempered, or I'm very short-tempered. Well, let's look at the opposite of that, long-tempered. Something happened, it made me angry, it made me want to strike back, but I'm going to be long-tempered, and I'm going to let this thing wait a minute. I'm not going to react with violence immediately or react in anger immediately. It's a calculated response, much like we see in the life of Jesus over and over again. And then fourthly, we see the word forbearance. Forbearance, or bearing with one another. in love. And forbearance is actually the most interesting word of these four, in my opinion. It means to hold up to complete a process. We're holding up together to complete this process. You're carrying a jacuzzi, or you're carrying a safe, or you're holding, you're bringing a couch up a flight of stairs, right? And you're holding up together. You're forbearing. You're bearing under that weight together. However, in the sense of relationships, it can also have to do with repeating the process again. We're going to hold together. We're going to work through this together. We're going to forbear together. And then we may have to repeat that process again. And then we're going to do it again. And we're going to repeat that process again. And we are not going to quit on each other, whatever it takes. Forbearance. Never giving up on one another. Paul uses these four qualities: humility, gentleness, patience, forbearance. I'll go through that process with you, and I may have to go through that process with you again. And then we're going to work on it again, and then we're going to work on it again, but we're not going to give up on each other. That's a good recipe for keeping unity, both in the church and in your families and in your friendships. Those four character qualities. Let's be looking at those and be intentional about implementing those character qualities in our lives. Verse 3, he says, make every effort to keep the unity. Every effort. Exhaust every possible solution. Leave it all on the field. Wasn't there a college football game that ended like 74-72? Did I read that right? Did it go 7 overtimes? Is that a thing? They can go 7 overtimes? And those guys just leaving it all on the field. Let's approach our relationships with one another in the church that way, our relationship with pastoral leadership that way, and our relationship with our families that way. The idea of being one body, Paul says. And the body needs all of its parts to function properly. You know, a few weeks back, I hurt my thumb pretty good, and it swelled up like a catcher's mitt under here. It was like a big fat lip, and I couldn't move it real well, but I'm a pretty stubborn guy, right? Any other stubborn guys in here? Anyone? Oh, okay, a lot of hands going up for that one. You guys are quick to admit it. I like that. And I didn't want to give up on other things. So I can't just cut off my thumb. I need my thumb. It's very helpful in everyday tasks. But yet I went about continuing my routines, lifting weights. It was hurting real bad. And I thought, maybe it's broken. It was pretty swollen. A week went by and it went down a bit. And then I went bowling with the men's group, which was a very poor decision on my part. And I told myself, I'm not going to complain about it the whole time. They'll think it's an excuse. I won the first game. With 5 strikes. Virgil won the second game. Is that right? Or you won the third? You won the third game. And he had a bunch of strikes. What did you score? 171? Something ridiculous. Something ridiculous. And Steve Beaumont won the second game with a huge come-from-behind victory. His last 5 balls, all strikes. But I went bowling, and my thumb was just hurting even worse after that. And then I played flag football with the guys here for our turkey bowl, and I jammed it real good. And I thought, you know what? I am not taking good care of this thing. And I had to take a humble pill and just say, you know, I need to back off of this. The rest of my body is strong enough to do all of these things, but because my thumb is suffering, I need to give it a rest. I actually went and got a brace. I showed that humility wearing the brace. I had to be gentle with my thumb and not let it get hurt again. I had to give it that time to heal with patience. And then I looked up some ways of exercising it, moving it around in circles and semicircles, and I did that process again and again and again. With my thumb, it was hurting. But I needed unity in my body. I wanted it to function properly. So with humility, with gentleness, with patience, with forbearance, I let it heal and I let it work itself out. And you know what? It works literally with your body, but it also works with your relationships. Those 4 character qualities will help you heal in the different relationships that mean the most to you. A hand needs the thumb, right? The church needs you. And your family needs you. They need you to be mom. They need you to be dad. They need you to be brother, sister, father, son, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle. They need you to be a part of that family. So keep the unity at all costs. The same Spirit of God is in each one of us. There's that commonality we have, and we need to stick together. The second portion of our text here, serve together. Verses 11 through 16. Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ might be built up until we reach unity in faith and in knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, Some translations say become perfect, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Serve together. In verse 12 it says that word equipped. Get equipped. He says Christ himself gave people to help equip the church. And then he lists the different type of people that exist or were born or were called to equip the church. That's the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers. I'm not going to read definitions for each one of those. If you'd like to do that on your own, God bless you. Go do that on your own. But the purpose of these called leaders or servants is to equip you. Literally, you, as you sit here and listen in the church, we are here to equip you for service. Just on the drive over here, I was driving with my wife and my kids, and we saw Mount Rainier. How many of you saw Mount Rainier on the way over here? You could see it. It was a clear day. It's awesome. And my youngest daughter, Brooklyn, said, "Is that the mountain with all the faces on it?" And I said, "No, that's Mount Rushmore." And she said, "Where's Mount Rushmore?" And I said, now I was taking a guess. I knew it was North or South Dakota, but if you say it with clarity and conviction, the kid will believe me. So I said, it's in South Dakota. I was right. I looked it up later. It's in South Dakota. The next question, where's South Dakota? Well, that's what I was thinking, Nicole. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's under North Dakota. That was the only thing I could think of. I know it's somewhere in the middle, sort of by Canada. But then my middle child, Jasmine, said, well, it's right above Nebraska and Kansas. Kansas or Kentucky? She had it. Kansas, thank you. It's right above Nebraska and Kansas. She bailed me out, so I didn't have to say below North Dakota. Because last year she had a geography teacher. They taught her geography. They equipped her to know the answers to these questions and to know what the world looks like and where things are, and she was equipped to answer that question. Well, God has appointed people. He has called people to help equip you so that you can have that spiritual maturity. You can grow in your relationship with Jesus. He has appointed people to equip you spiritually. That word equip is a fantastic word, and I was excited to share this with you as I studied it out myself. The word equip in Greek that Paul uses is a twofold meaning. It means recovered wholeness and discovered function. Wow, I like that definition. Recovered wholeness. In other words, you were broken, something was missing, something was hurting, something was suffering, something was lacking, but then to be equipped means you were brought together to a place of wholeness again. And the calling of the church is to bring people who are in darkness, who are lost, who are broken, who are suffering, who have questions that have gone unanswered, have all kinds of different things going on, and to bring them back to a place of wholeness as God desires them to be. And as that wholeness is recovered, you begin to discover your function. What is my calling? What was I designed to do? And here in the church, you should be able to recover that wholeness and discover your function so that you can thrive in service. Get equipped. Recover that wholeness. You know, Mondays, we have Manly Monday, and we've shared a lot of heart-to-heart things as of late, and I feel like men have started to recover their wholeness again. On Tuesdays, we have prayer night. We come here at 6:30, and we just have worship similar to what we opened the service with here, and we just pray together, and we're recovering that wholeness of our heart as we pour our hearts out before the Lord. We have New Heart on Wednesday as a part of recovering that wholeness, and we need to be discovering our function. I want to encourage you in that. If you're steady and faithful in the local church, you will recover your wholeness, and you will discover your function, and you will go out and you will thrive in service. Second word he uses is edified in verse 13. To grow in maturity, be edified. To be edified, number one, he gives 3 ways to be edified, 3 things to be growing in. Number one, be growing in maturity. He says in verse 13, become mature, or some translations say perfect, attaining to the whole fullness of Christ. Now you may say, I'll never be perfect. Is the Bible calling me to be perfect? It's calling you to maturity. And in a way, it is perfection. And I'll explain. You've heard about my famous power drill, or my infamous power drill, right? The day I bought my power drill. Not a very handy man. And my power drill as it stands today, I should have brought it. It has lots of scratches. You know, it has some dings. It has some discoloration on it. The end of it is worn down a little bit. I'd like to say it's because I take it and I throw it in the back of my Manly pickup truck to go do manual work and build things, and it gets knocked around. But really, I place it in the very freshly vacuumed carpet of my minivan, and it's not quite as rugged and manly, but I use it from time to time. But you look at it, it's got some scratches, it's got some dings, it's worn out. But when I pick it up and I need to drill something into the wall or put a screw into the wall, it works nicely. It accomplishes what it was set out to accomplish. It may not look like a perfect drill, but it does what it was designed to do. So in that manner, it's perfect. And maturity, as we look at this word, and what Paul is telling the church, is reaching that point where you know what you were designed to do, and you are doing it. Some of you it's building, it's working with your hands. Some of you it's teaching. Some of you it's helping with Sunday school. It can be in your place of work. It can be in your family. What has God called you and equipped you to do? What has He designed you to do? Because if you discover that function and you are living in that function, you have been growing in maturity. And according to this definition, you're perfect because you fit as God designed you to fit. And you may look at yourself and say, I have cuts, I have scars, I've made mistakes, life has tossed me around a little bit, and you look at my life and it's not perfect. But if you're doing what God has called you to do, you're living in spiritual maturity, there's perfection there. A different definition, but perfection nonetheless. Secondly, after grow in maturity, grow in stability. In verse 14, he says, then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, blown here and there by every wind of teaching, cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful schemes. He says, you're no longer infants. There must be a time of growth. We should not stay in spiritual infancy for too long. We need to continue to grow. And he says this is the reason. Infants are easily deceived. How many of you have ever stolen an infant's nose? I got your nose. Have you ever upset a child who thought you really had their nose? I have, right? My nephew got really upset because I had his nose. Infants are easily deceived. I remember when I was a kid, my little baby was a kid, she's 12 now. When she was a little baby, I'd push her in the swing, and the swing would only come up to about my chin. But I'd say, I'm pushing you up high into the sky, where it's blue. And it would go up, and she would think she's in the sky. And now that she's 12, we go by that same set of swings, and she laughs at herself and says, I can't believe I used to think I was flying through the sky. Right? As infants, we're easily deceived. We stumble, we fall, we're blown and pushed around, right? He's saying, as Christians, you need to grow out of that infant stage. The infant stage is lovely, it's adorable, it's wonderful, it's miraculous. And when you come to faith, all those same truths apply. But we need to continue to grow in maturity, grow in stability, and continue to grow. And as we grow, we're no longer so easily fooled by things, are we? You know, if you grow in the truth, you'll easily spot a lie. If you're growing in your walk with the Lord, if you're growing in the knowledge of His Word, if you're growing in that relationship with the Spirit of God, you're going to know when something is off. I had a friend who worked at a bank, and I asked him if they taught him how to spot counterfeits. And he said, you know, they didn't do a class on spotting counterfeits, but they had us count so much money all the time that the first time someone came in with a counterfeit, I was counting it, and immediately, whoa, this one's wrong. He could just feel it because he'd spent so much time with the real thing. And as Christians, as we spend more and more time in the presence of God, in worship, in the Word of God, when things come that are going to throw our lives off course, we'll be stable. We'll say, no, I know that's a lie. I know that's not true. I know that's going to lead me down the path I do not desire to go. And thirdly, grow in influence. Verse 15, he says, speak the truth in love. Speaking. Our words matter. Words can build up and words can tear down. Words can impart faith, or words can leave room for doubt. Silence can create distance. Let the people in your life hear you speak. Don't be a mystery. Speak the truth in love. Don't leave room for doubt. Don't create distance. Our words are important. He says, speak the truth about Jesus, His love, His grace for our mistakes, His grace for our sin, His plan, and His design for someone. Speak that truth. The truth about your faith. The truth about your experience with God. Speak that truth. Don't stay silent about who you are and what Jesus has done in your life. And then he says, speak the truth in love. Don't let our words be harsh and condemning. Make sure that our words are seasoned with grace. With your family, speak the truth in love. Open your heart and speak true words of love and appreciation. Words are incredibly valuable. If loving words are left unsaid, if you have someone you love in your life and you have loving words for them and you don't say them, It is like walking away from piles of cash on a table. It's so valuable. Our words mean so much. They're really everything. They communicate what we think. They communicate how we feel. Our words about our faith, our words about our trust in Jesus, our words about our love for one another. He says, speak the truth in love. And if you haven't done something like that in a long time, and it's awkward, if it would be awkward to say to your spouse how much you love them and you haven't done that, or a mother or a father or a son or a daughter, just say, hey, I know I don't say this enough, but I really love you. Start there. Speak the truth in love. And like I said, if it's awkward, just say, hey, there's something I got to say, and I know I don't say this enough. I love you. We will grow to become that mature person God has called us to be. And thirdly, stay the course. Verses 17 through 24, we'll just read a little part of it. I tell you this, and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. Stay the course. No longer like the rest. No longer meaning you used to be there. You used to live like that. You used to live like they live, but by the grace of God, your life has been changed. Don't go back. Futility of thought, aimless, meaningless, no destination, hard-hearted, closed off from God, closed off from family, that futility of thinking. There's a lost sensitivity, no longer feeling the proper emotions, no longer sensing the presence of God anymore. Don't go back to that. Giving yourself over to sensuality, he goes on in that passage. For time's sake, I'll just paraphrase. Giving yourself over to greed, trying to find something that means something, and none of it means anything. Don't go back to that. You only found yourself sick, broken, alone, and discarded. But then you found Jesus. He's brought healing. He's brought meaning. He's brought purpose. He showed you your design. Don't go back to the way you lived before you knew Jesus. Verses 25 through 31, they describe how they used to live versus how they live now. He said, you were liars, but now we speak the truth in love. Your life was characterized by anger, but now we work things out. You were thieves, but now you do honest work. You used to speak in corruption, but now we speak in grace. We used to resist the Spirit of God and live in rebellion, but now our lives embrace the Spirit of God, and we want even more. We crave more. We lived with bitterness and rage, out of control, but now we are filled with compassion and forgiveness. Verses 21 through 24, he says, be made new. Put off your old self, your deceitful desires. You think you want them. Think about that phrase, deceitful desire. It's a desire that you think you want, but it's deceitful. It's not what you really want. It's going to lead you to a place you don't want to go. Be made new. Live with a new attitude, a new perspective on life. Following Jesus every day. Loving the people in our lives every day. Speaking that truth in love every single day. Keeping the unity. And how do we do that? Those character qualities we spoke of a few moments ago. Humility, gentleness, patience, and my favorite out of that group, forbearance. We're going to go through the process, and if it's still not worked out, we're going to go through the process again. And that can apply to a mutually beneficial relationship where we're on the same page, or that can apply to someone who's really struggling and someone who's trying to help them along. We're going to go through it again. Do we need to go through? Let's go through it again. Forbearance. That's how God has loved us. That's how God has treated us. And Paul leaves them with the thought of saying, let's be like God. Let's be like Jesus. If we could have the worship team come forward, stick together, serve together, stay the course. Stick together in humility, in gentleness and patience, in forbearing. Ask yourself right now, do I need more of those character qualities in my life? Have I been living with an arrogance? Have I been living roughly? Have I been treating people poorly? Do I need more of those character qualities? Stick together. Those character qualities will keep us together. Serve together. Get equipped. Remember, recover your wholeness. Discover your function. And thrive in service. And stay the course. Don't look back. If someone here is tempted to look back and go back to old habits, old ways, old places, old lifestyle, I'm telling you right now, this message is for you. Don't go back. Put off the old self. Walk in newness of life with Jesus. Let's stand together as we close. The worship team will lead us in song. You're free to come forward and pray. If you need prayer for something, we'll be up here to pray with you. Pastor Brad will close the service and dismiss us in a few moments.